Hey guys, welcome to another video from myself, Fraser. I thought we'd get the Fokker friendship out once again. I really love this, really enjoy flying this aircraft. I can't wait till it gets ported over to 2024, but here we are at Wellington Airport on what is a sort of a stormy-ish day here in New Zealand, so I thought this is a great time to do some IFR flying. And we're in the stunning the final livery. This is basically this is NAC, which is basically back in the days, I think it was equivalent of the like New Zealand and NAC were effectively run by the government. This was for the domestic flying and New Zealand was for the international flights. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I sort of the gist I get from it. And then they of course merged in the 1979, but this is the final livery from NAC, Wings of the Nation, with the Godwit, which is doesn't breed here. It's a native bird by default because it migrates here and it's found naturally, but it breeds in Alaska and it migrates every year over the summer months to New Zealand, and it's got a very proud, like, what was I gonna say, the local indigenous people of New Zealand, of Aotearoa New Zealand, the Maoris, they highly regard the Godwit, which is quite unique. It's not like a breeding species, but it's a migratory species, and it's a very special bird in Aotearoa New Zealand's history. And here we are flying with this stunning NAC livery, the orange and red, or some people call that maroon or a real dark orange. But yeah, this is NAC, and we're going to do a couple of flights today. If time permits, we'll fly from Wellington up to Rotorua, my old hometown, and then from there I plan on going to Auckland and then on down to Napier, then maybe back to Wellington. We'll see how it goes. But I thought I'd make use of this stormy weather that New Zealand's been hit with at the moment, the old classic spring bursts. But anyway, we'll get into this plane and we'll show you guys, like, through my basic knowledge of aviation and how to get this started up, and yeah, we'll get going. We'll give this a go too. We'll give this a go, the FSUD, see how it performs with this IFR, but flying with the radio navigation. So yeah, we'll jump in and we'll get this all started up. So first we'll come into here, we'll get our weights so I can get rid of this window. So we're going to be flying up with 2,500 kgs of fuel, so we will load this in like so. I do like the weight and balance page in Flight Simulator 2020 versus 24. It just feels so much like, when you're just doing fast flying, you don't care about adding in all the different passengers. It's just so much faster, but it is what it is. Zero fuel weight is 15.1, so we'll just scroll this back. Actually, no, we want the estimated takeoff weight, which is, we'll make that as it is. Might give it a bit more fuel just in case, but yeah, we can now get rid of that page and we'll go through, and it sounds like a very, very windy day there in Wellington, which I believe it is in real life. Right, we'll get some lights going, and we can turn on the navigation light, And just looking for these other lights. Yeah, get some nice old-fashioned red lights going, eh? And we'll get the bit of, what do you call it, bit of, to get the gallery powered up so they can make coffee for the passengers. Turn on the windshield heater. I don't think we'll need any, I'm not too sure what these does, I just turn them on anyway. And we can now go through and turn on the fuel pumps so they're all ready to go when we're ready to go. A little Q300 taking off there. Might actually be going to Rotorua actually. Right, I'll just get rid of these. And let's start program. I'm sure there's another light somewhere. There we go, that's what I'm after. Right, I'll just push the magic B button to get my altimeter set, and we'll turn on the batteries now, eh? We'll turn on the radio masters. We'll turn on the inverters, which is what I've just memorized with the checklist, and those stay off for now. We'll turn on the no smoking and the fuel, then the seatbelt signs. I guess we can turn that on now. Just seeing what's happening out there. Right, let's set up our radios, eh? So we're flying out of Wellington, so we're going to set that up in our DME up here. I do hope they, when the guy that does this aircraft updates it again, hopefully they can add in a second DME just to make things a bit easier in today's build. And then we'll set up Parapara Umu as, I'll set this up first. .3. Now we want to add in these ADF, this NDB. We're going to do a bit of NDB flying today, which will add in a bit of a challenge. Make sure we get these numbers correctly. 242. We might have to play around with that because I have found if it's not in the correct, because I've got no real reference for where it should be, but if it's out by a little bit, it won't pick it up. And we'll set in Wanganoi's one in here like so, which is 382. Right, let's see how that works when we take off. And our first radio is gonna, we'll just set that to radio 2, is gonna be 353. And we'll just set this for our next waypoint, which is going to be 340. Right, let's see what ATC let's see how this works today. One thing we will do is we'll set, this is yeah, that's about right. Runway 16. And we're just going to be basically flying runway heading for our takeoff, so I'll just set that up to 160. Alright, what else do I need to do? I've done... set the runway. Oh, that's right, I was going to do... So this is... when you go through the checklist, it'll do this, it'll come up with the fuel trim. Like I said, I'm not a real-world pilot by any means, but I believe that's equivalent of like using mixtures in these planes. You can adjust this to adjust the fuel flow. I'm not too sure how simulated it is, but it's quite cool to do this anyway. So we're going to go off our outside air temperature is 12 degrees, so we sort of find it in, so when it's sort of between 35 and 40, so you come down here and you just use the scroll button and just scroll this down until it's just between, just below the 40. That looks perfect. And we can now, I'm not too sure how much this is linked in because I do find it rotates quite easily anyway at a lower speed, but we'll just set these, we'll just set the VR and the V2. So 10, 5 and 10. Right about here. Sweet, we will now shut up the doors and get this aircraft ready for its departure. So I'll come back over here and we will close the doors and make sure they're closing. For a freeware aircraft, this is absolutely amazing. Anti-collision lights can come on. We can now flip the switch, flick it up like so, and then start the engine. And then I guess we'll get some fuel into there. We'll just come out here and just enjoy the sound of these darts. Lovely. I miss the sound of these engines. I was too young to this airline was already well and truly part of New Zealand by the time I was born, but I was very fortunate to see the Fokker friendships with Mount Cook Airlines flying to Rotorua, which is very, and then of course the Hawker Sydneys, which I hope someone does one day. But they do have the sounds pretty well in here, the guy that did this. Chuck that into the open position, and then once it starts, once it sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, balances out, once it sort of, okay, now select that to the lock position, and that's the engines all fired up. We'll just get our taxi clearance. We can now turn that off, shut that, and then put that into the starboard position. We can now turn on the generators. turn on these alternators, and then we can get rid of the just because I think there's a bug there in this aircraft, but when you want to engage the so if you just flick this down, it will engage the external power, but I find I end up with bugs, so I can't turn the engine on, so I just come into here and click on this button here to get the external power engaged, and then I just go up here. If I want to turn it off, just flick it into the aircraft power mode, and we are ready to take off. So we will put our fuel trims into the takeoff, which you can use this little dial thing up here. So that's basically 100%, and you just want to match it up with these temperatures. So because it's basically we're sea level and it's 15 degrees outside, we can use 100%. And we use flaps 16 for takeoff. And you can hear it actually power up when you increase the fuel trims, which is pretty cool. Right, we will get going, eh? And it's got a really good turning radius too, which is what these aircraft were all about back in the day. Most of the airports didn't have pushbacks and whatnot. But yeah, when you look at it, it looks like basically a Dash 8, doesn't it really? But it's a stunning aircraft. And it's a nice livery, and it's a bit of a blast from the past, NAC. Like I say, it's a NAC looked after all the domestic, but they did do the odd international flights to Norfolk Island, I believe, and also to where else do they go? Some of the islands in the Pacific Islands, like Nui and Rarotonga, I do believe. And I also believe that NAC did come close to getting the 727s, and I think that's when it's a very interesting time in aviation, and same with Australia too, but that's when they decided. Actually, I'll turn on my little taxi light. I think it's a very interesting time in aviation. Everything is quite tightly regulated, I do believe, and when NAC were looking at acquiring 727s, I think that's when Air New Zealand wanted the government to do something about it, so they decided to... I believe that's partly how it went with the merger, and then this airline, rightly or wrongly, ended up becoming part of Air New Zealand, was merged into Air New Zealand. It's one of those interesting ones. I think it happened on not so good terms, and then other people in the industry said it was for the better, but yeah. But yeah, this is NAC. This is the airline that basically we're pioneers for air travel in New Zealand. One of the first scheduled service airlines in New Zealand. And they went through different liveries, but this one was the final one. I really do like that livery. It looks really, really cool. And it's a livery that people will remember. We'll see photos when Air New Zealand had an orange and red livery. This is what basically it was when the merger happened, basically overnight, Air New Zealand repainted the aircraft to match as much as possible the current livery of the time, which is the sweeping sheet line on the DC-10. But they narrowed up the white border to match it in, and then they put the kuru on the tail. They got rid of the godwit and replaced it with the kuru. And like I say, they narrowed this up, and then basically by the time it came around to painting these aircraft in the Air New Zealand teal livery, the livery had changed with the arrival of the 747s, and that's where we got that. The famous turquoise and blue cheat lines that we had of the 80s. It's almost like when they did that livery, Air New Zealand kept with the NAC's fixed sheet lines, but they'd done away with the sweeping livery here, because I don't think it would have suited the 747s anyway. And then of course they just replaced these colours with their blue and turquoise. And I think Wellington Airport is one of those airports where the developer hasn't engaged these taxiway points. Because I notice up the other end, the aircraft backtrack on when they're taking off from runway 34, which is a little annoying. There must have been an error there. One of the second to last taxiway is the taxiways up here, the real end ones, I don't think were connected up to the runway, which is a bit of a shame. And it's annoying because if you want to taxi to the end of this runway here, you won't get clearance for takeoff if you're flying with the 737 or the A320. And I think we are just going to taxi onto the runway and line up. And we'll turn on those the pitot, and we also turn on the water injector. You only really do that, from what I was reading online, if it's raining, but it looks like it could rain any moment here in Wellington. I like that howl that you get when you power down the engines. Alright, we've got clearance for takeoff. Let's go. Full throttle. There actually hasn't been any proper YouTube video tutorials on this aircraft, so I'm just guessing. But away we go. And we're basically, because it's such a windy day here, we're already getting liftoff. Oh. Such an iconic aircraft in New Zealand's history, the Fokker Friendship. With that wind, we're just absolutely flying, really. Right, we'll just follow our runway heading because there are hills around the area. We don't want to make a mistake. And we are definitely doing instrument flying because out there it's a very, very murky day out there. Right, we can raise up the flaps now. Pull up that nose a bit. Fly heading 140, so we'll do that. It is a bit of a mind game when you're flying without any visual references. There's one little bug with this aircraft. I find if you engage the autopilot too low, it does this really weird nose down. Alright, we'll fly heading 125. This is really cool. I haven't really had like these proper vectors before when I'm taking off. Usually they just tell me to fly direct to a waypoint, but I just had an update before too, so hopefully it's there we go. We can now continue on to our heading. Actually, what I do need to do is change this to Wellington's VOR. Oh, don't want to drop too much. I'm just going to pull the throttles back a bit because there's just myself flying this aircraft. There are a few things I need to do, but I can't yet. Fly towards, so we're going to fly towards the Wellington VOR, then track outbound on that radio. Right, we are going to try now, see if we get that annoying pitch down or not. Right, let's try hitting this, and then we're going to go into that mode there. So that went perfectly. We didn't get that annoying pitch down. Right, what we will do is we'll change these to open now. We'll select this to sync, and we can turn off the water injectors. And I think that's us. We can now set this to, oh no, yeah, if we've got given flight levels now, so we can change that to standard. And we can now use the VOR button, and we can now use autopilot to follow that. And we're breaking through the clouds. That's a stunning view, isn't it? The Fokker friendship, and in the old, oh, I forgot to turn on the landing lights when I took off. Oh well, I was in a bit of a rush there. We can turn those all off now. Release the crew. Yeah, I'm not too sure what all of these buttons do. I think they must be for like the pressurization of the aircraft. But we won't fly up to 23,000 feet. We'll just fly up to 19 today. Right, we'll increase a bit of warp speed and we'll speed on out to make this go a bit faster. You always have your heart in your mouth when the game stops like that. And we will now need to enter in 17.3, so that 242, so hopefully the ADF will kick in soon. Or NDB, whatever you call it. Might be one of those cases where you might just have to fiddle around with this, trying to get it. There we go. It's a bit, I have no idea, I've got no real like reference on where it is at, but it's just one of those things. Right, we'll go into heading mode now, because we'll just be using these. We'll just be flying with these, with the NDB now, which unfortunately the autopilot back in those days didn't have the technology to fly these automatically, which would have helped a lot back in the days. I think these are flying this sort of navigation was probably one of the hardest to master. It's all about chasing this needle, trying to push this needle to the course that you want to fly. And when you get close to it, it becomes really, really sensitive. And because we're flying over it now, it's going to spin around. So we'll select our outbound, which is 340. We can basically, actually that's Rotorua's VOR, isn't it? So we don't need to change that. Oh no, I'll just get this set to Rotorua's VOR. And hopefully this needle will come all the way around here. If not, we're just going to have to try and chase it. And we'll set this up for reference for our next outbound, which is going to be 350. Oh, and we'll select our altitude now. We're at our cruising altitude. And I believe in real life they decrease this down to 20 from what I've seen in the videos for the cruising speeds. Alright, we're going to have to chase this needle now. See that needle slow, that NDB marker slowly coming around, which is good to see. Shows that we are doing something right. Slowly coming around there, we can straighten this up. And as you can see, well, we're a little bit off. It's actually 39, but right, we're slowly getting that, getting on course here, so we can sort of straighten it up ever so slightly. Right, we will play with this one now, just see if we're yeah, it's real guessing games where this should be. You can actually turn off the lights now. We don't really need them on anymore. Just make sure it's 382. Yeah, 382. We should start getting it on soon, getting it alive, but we will now tune into Wanganui's DME, which is 16. So Airbus up in the sky there. Right, we need to really figure out how to get this other NDB to come onto line. Surely by now it should have. I've always had issues with this actually. Just gotta try and find it again. Right, it doesn't seem to be engaging for some reason. So just going to have to cheat and just use this navigraph. Hopefully this next waypoint will work, which is 16. Just seeing if it's going to work on this side. No response whatsoever. I think I know what I've done now. That's the reason. So when you see that little plus sign, because there's some of these DMEs have 4 figures, that plus means it's gone to the, and that's why. Right, we've learned something new, folks. Right, we've got to try and chase this outbound, and while that's doing that, we'll enter in this one 1630. So right, we seem to be pointing to that heading with the NDB quite nicely. It's just a shame you can't. It would be cool if FS HUD just has this little button that just, so you don't have to worry about it, that just, you just go, yep, we're flying an old school aircraft, I just want to do vectoring for landing and whatnot. I think it would just set that game, just make this really complete. But yeah, there's, when you're flying with these sort of, using these old school radios, you don't really have much time to just enjoy the view and look outside. And basically, when it's pointing out to the left like that, you just need to use a bit of left turn to pull yourself back in again. And what we will do is, I think we're going to be landing on runway 36 for our arrival, so we're just going to use a VOR approach, which is going to be... and that's the one we're going to be using. Yeah, we're basically flying over basically the heart of the North Island, New Zealand. This is just real, like, basically it's just all farmland, but it's just miles from nowhere. You got the Whanganui National Park around here, then you got just a real steep backcountry. We're getting back on track with the Tamananui NDB. Once we figured out how to work it, which is great to learn now, so when it's got the plus, it means it's, as you know, there's some NDBs with four numbers, so that means it's that plus means it's you can use it as a set it up for 4 numbers using the free numbers up there, if you know what I mean. And that is the Rotorua NDB coming alight, so we are just going to fly straight in for our approach, which is going to be 29, so I'll just get 29 set up here for reference. And then once we fly over this NDB, we'll head in for our, basically we're going to be flying straight into Rotorua. That's what I'm going to do today. And our next time we do a flight, like when we do to Napier, we might do one of these nice interesting arcs into Napier. And I believe that's us flying over our, must be flying over Tamananui now. So I'll set this to 29. And I guess we can start our descent soon. And we're just going to change our arrival, which is, what do we select again? It was DMEC. And we'll just go straight in. Oh, they changed this to runway 18, so we'll try and figure out what we're going to do. So what we'll do is we'll fly our actual original inbound 22. And then we'll just follow this approach like so. We'll fly out like this and come around and line it up. So we'll set this up for just to get it all ready. And we're flying over the western side of Lake Taupo there. This is the Pureura forest that we're flying over, which is another big national park. A really nice part of the country to visit too. Some beautiful examples of massive native untouched forest, massive trees. And we're just going to set all of these up for our Rotorua approach. And we're just going to speed it up again. Right, we'll set our altimeter to 0.05. Alright, I think we can start our descent now, so we're just going to scroll this down like so. And we want to be flying over Rotorua VOR at 3,000? At 4,000. Then once we get out to 10 nautical miles, we want to descend down to 3,100. We'll pull that speed right back because we are going quite fast. We can now turn on the seatbelt signs. We'll turn on the landing lights this time. And we can now take this out of sync, get rid of that. And I believe when they're coming into land to descent, they usually get this fuel to 100%. And then they select these to lock. And we might just increase our rate of descent a little bit more. So when we fly over Rotorua, oh, that's the overspeed sound. We want to fly outbound on 342. Then once we get 10 nautical miles, we want to spin around and come back on 186. Just lower this, increase our rate of descent a little bit more. We'll just shallow out our rate of descent now. We're coming up to Rotorua's VOR. and we'll set our minimums, which is 1590. And we can now basically hold our altitude. Thereabouts be fine. Flying over Rotorua, off a point there. I think the weather was probably reasonable enough to just do a visual approach, but that's alright. Right, we'll fly outbound and we'll select that to and then that was 186, wasn't it? Flying over the connection between Rotorua and Lake Rotoiti there, connected by this little stream. And we can start reducing the speed and getting ourselves set up for our landing. So our approach speed is going to be 105, and I think that's our landing speed, 98. And I'm just going to take over, put it back into heading mode, and we'll set our inbound, which is going to be 186. Right, we'll start our descent now to 33,100. And we'll start our turn for the inbound. Now lower our landing gear. And we're basically in visual approach conditions now. We can now select that for our inbound bit. We don't have to worry about this too much because visually we've got a good visual of the airport there. But at 7.2 we can start our 3-degree descent, which will roughly be between 600 and 700 feet per minute. So we'll give that a try, see how it works in the real life. But we'll turn on our radio altimeter. And at 7.2 we'll select our actually we're going to now take control of the aircraft, disengage the autopilot, just cancel that, and we'll fly this last bit ourselves. Full flaps. And then it's just a case of identifying the runway, which is what we've got just next to the end of the window panel there, and now all lined up for our visual approach onto Rotorua Airport, runway 18. We've got a bit of a crosswind too, but I'm not too sure how much crosswinds have effect on this aircraft. I'm not too sure if that's just turbulence or a bit of feedback, but it's pretty fun to try and fight the wind, isn't it? And that's us, touchdown in Rotorua Airport. I have to try and stop it from ending up in the grass. Flaps can go up, the landing lights can come off. The pitot heats can now come off as well. And we're just going to turn around in this little turnaround bay here, which was the original Rotorua Airport size. Well, that was a pretty decent landing, fighting the crosswind a bit there, but we managed to get it on the ground. And in real life, this taxiway never existed. I mean, not in real life, and when this aircraft was flying into Rotorua. Up until 2004, this taxiway never existed, so we'll just go ultra retro old school, and we'll just carry on and use this taxiway here. And the taxi lights can now come off, and we can now taxi on to our and taxi gate 1, I think it is, that we've been assigned. And we were looking at him from the other way, so it's guiding us for gate 2, but we're taxing into gate 1, and that is us, folks. We will now power down the aircraft. First, we'll engage the ground power first, so there's not any bugs, and that's us. Turn off the generators. We can now turn off our alternators. We can release the passengers. Turn off the evacuation light, and we can now turn off the fuel pumps. And back in the old days, they didn't really wait for this they just started unloading the passengers. So we can now open up the doors and the seats. And this is back in 1980s when health and safety wasn't a big thing, so we can now open up the front door and get these bags out. And that's us, folks. I'm going to do a turnaround flight, but I'll do this in a separate video, but stay tuned and we'll be back very shortly.